All right. So theoretically, I'm live. All right. So I don't know about you. I just watched the Born to Bowl second episode. I really enjoyed it because I've been there and been to both sides of that, and things are going good or things are not going as well as you like, and I've done my fair share of swearing. Even though when I'm on TV, I try to keep it calm. I think guys know that when they're on TV. If you've watched any of the previous documentaries, the Pen Gods or League of Ordinary Gentlemen. I'm sure I swore in there a couple of times. But I know I'm being taped, so I try to mind my P's and Q's. Of course, if you've watched my videos that I stream and stuff, I do swear a little bit. I try to keep it down, but especially this last weekend when I kept throwing bad shots, it's kind of frustrating. So um, anyway, my arm's doing okay. I bowled 3 regionals the last 3 weekends, and, I actually cashed in all 3 of them. Unfortunately, the last rounds that I bowled in each of the tournaments were not very good, so, the first 2 I didn't get to the match play or the continuation part of the tournament. This last weekend, I actually made the first round of match play, and then I bowled a bad match, so that was kind of frustrating, but, lanes were challenging, which is the way they should be. Some guys are complaining about the lanes being, the scores being really low, but honestly, they really should be that way every week. I think we've gotten spoiled with all the house shots across the country and how how easy the lane conditions are, and you learn to be a bad bowler or not as good bowler, not as sharp. When you bowl in tougher lane conditions, you got to be a lot more accurate. You got to throw better shots, and I'm definitely um, the effects of that have affected my game. It doesn't help that I was off for 8 months, but even before that, last year, in the last 10, 15 years, my game's definitely not been as good as it was before that. Of course, age has a little to do with that. I think part of it is just my practice. I don't practice as much as I used to. The desire. I love to compete. The desire to go out and work on my game is not quite as high as it needs to be. So you kind of get what you get out of it. So um, I think I had a couple other questions earlier. I don't know if I can. Oh well, I probably can't find them. Oh well. You get frustrated when someone on your pair doesn't understand the double jump rule. I do get a little frustrated. In the PBA we have a lane courtesy, and it's actually very simple. Basically, you take the whole pair of lanes to your left, the whole pair that you're bowling on, the whole pair to your right, and that's kind of what you work with. So basically, a player on the left and a player on the right pairs go, and then somebody on your pair goes. And then the double jumping means that somebody in your pair goes before the guys in the pairs left and right of you go. So basically, kind of helps keep the flow going. Um, Basically, bowling it's your turn. That's kind of the rule. But the thing is the lane courtesy is not one lane. It's not 2 lanes. It's the whole pair. So if I'm on lane 11 or lane 12, doesn't matter which one, I give courtesy to the guys on 9 through 10 and 13 through 14. Now the guys beyond that, they really don't matter. However, sometimes in match play, guys will wait for those pairs, which is also frustrating. I've actually been yelled at because I got up when it was okay for me to go. And been yelled at because I got up and went when it was kind of my turn and they yelled at me. And I'm like, you're the one not following the rules right. You're kind of being a prima donna. And I call him out on it. So, but I understand part of it during match play, especially the elimination matches. You get down to the final frames and stuff, and guys get really excited. They make a lot of noise, whether they win or lose. They make a lot of noise, and you don't want to be distracted. Which that they showed that on this last episode, where somebody yelled something and caught somebody else while he was bowling. It's frustrating. It happens all the time. It's nobody likes it. We've all been, we've all had it happen. We've probably caused it to somebody. I know I have. So I apologize, or I try to. I probably haven't apologized every time, and I've been caught with other guys. So yeah, that's part of it. It's very frustrating, and especially when you're competing, your emotions are up, and especially when things aren't going quite the way you want. It's definitely amazing. So, still play horseshoes regularly. Yes, I do. If you follow my on my Facebook page, I stream my stuff kind of live, and then I'll tape it and I'll put it on my YouTube channel. Not many people are interested in watching it on the YouTube, so I don't put it on there very often. I did put on a tournament that I played a few weeks ago, but again, not many people watched it. It was actually one of my better tournaments, which is why I put it on there. You guys don't want to see me play that. Well, maybe you do. You got plenty of chances here. And some of my posts, I just my last weekend in league were pretty pathetic. So there is that. I guess I could conveniently say, "Oh, I forgot to tape it," but it was live on the one episode or the one streaming thing. So I still play horseshoes competitive. I'm pretty decent. I actually play horseshoes competitive left-handed, which is kind of strange for most people because I won all my world championships right-handed. However, I did finish second twice playing left-handed. When I was young, I broke my finger, broke my wrist later on, and I learned how to play left-handed. But I was way better right-handed, so it was never a big issue. And over the years, I got some bad habits, and just I it was hard for me to shake some of those bad habits, and I got very frustrated in the tournaments. And so I thought, I think if I practiced, I would. If I played left-handed all the time, I think I could get almost as good, and I probably wouldn't. I'd probably have more fun initially. And I did. I actually did. I actually played pretty well. I actually played better those first 2 years playing full time left handed than I did right handed the 2 years previous at the World Tournament, which is really actually a surprise to me. I really didn't think it was going to be that good. I was very pleased as good as I did. Like I said, I finished second in the World Tournament. Now, finishing second sounds really awesome, which it is. But there were several players that weren't at the tournament, so if they'd have been there, I probably would have finished fourth or fifth or sixth. So still a great tournament, but compared to what I was, 15, 20 years before that, when I was at the top of my game, it was not even close. And the guy who won the tournament, Alan Francis, he's been world champion since 1994, pretty much every year except for 3 years. And he finished second those 3 years. And no, I wasn't the guy who beat him. Last time I won was actually 1994, and since then he's won it every year except 3 times. So I'm still pretty competitive. I am the Florida State men's champion. I think I'm ranked in the top 15 in the world, so I'm decent. And that's actually playing with my left hand, so that's not bad. And it's funny because you say, "Well, why don't you play right-handed?" Well, actually, right-handed I'm not that good anymore. Of course, having the shoulder surgery doesn't help, but I was actually pitching a little bit tonight, or practicing a little bit tonight, and hadn't played in a couple weeks. Up, traveled up north and went to Carolinas and Bolton tournaments. Haven't really played much horseshoes the last couple of weeks, so I wasn't expecting a whole lot. But then afterwards, I started playing right-handed, and it's like, oh my, it's it's a bit of a struggle because my follow through's not there. I don't have a big backswing. Even just getting the full distance is a tiny bit of a challenge. So, but I keep telling myself I got to work on that follow through because I need to get that more in a bowling game. So, have you seen Bob Learn or any of the bowlers that were on the main tour during the 80s and 90s that are currently bowling in the 50? Well, the PBA 50 tour hasn't started yet, so I haven't seen too many of those guys. We got the first tournament here next month at the Villages, the one tournament, so I'm sure we'll get a few guys there. And then they're going to have the PBA 50 World Series of Bowling up in Minnesota, which I'm planning to go. And then I'm planning to bowl most of the tournaments. I need to bowl better though. Honestly, I've just been like just getting checks on the regional tournaments, and that's just not good enough to bowl in the national tour. So I need to. My spare shooting the last 2 weeks were absolutely awful. Very disappointed in that. But obviously my strike, my first shot needs to be better also. So we'll see what happens. Got a couple weeks to work on things, and hopefully I can get my game a little bit better. But I haven't seen too many of the guys that are going to bowl full time. I've seen a couple guys because they bowl some of the tournaments, but yeah, I haven't seen those. Please put a like on the live stream. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but okay. I know when I was bowling regionals, we would get in a rhythm, so it would flow smoothly. Yeah, it's unfortunately those who aren't used to it, it's a little confusing because they're used to maybe one lane courtesy or two lane. I think probably two lane courtesy for most scratch bowlers, but and they don't quite, and they kind of want to get up and bowl when they think they want to get up and bowl, and I appreciate that. I think that's great. Um, the problem is if guys are bowling when they're not supposed to, it's not good. Now the other problem is this last week and the week before we've had five on a pair, and some pairs have four on a pair. So I was this last week when during qualifying I had five on my pair, and the pairs left to me and right of me had four on a pair. Now if I'm those guys, I'm going to let us five on a pair bowl, more often, because that way because otherwise that they're going to have to wait between games. And I was actually kind of thankful we had five on a pair because I don't want to get in that spot where I have to go to a pair and then got to wait 10, 15 minutes. That's at my age, 66. That's not very much fun. I don't need to get more stiff than I am. As long as I'm, bowling and being regular about it, it's good. So, let's see. Um, Nice bowling with you in Fayetteville. Oh, yeah, thanks, Robert. Had to get used to the double jumping rule. Thank you for the patience and compassion. Promise I will get better. Yeah, I crossed with Robert at the tournament, and he didn't quite totally understand it, but he picked it up pretty quick. The guy bowling next to me, he had a little more trouble, and then he bowled a 300. Unfortunately, the score machines there, we didn't even know he was shooting a 300 because the score monitors were actually down below in the main settee area. Um, so it was kind of strange, and unfortunately, he shot good games. He didn't shoot good games before and after that, so he didn't actually did very well in the tournament. But it was like amazing. Well, he shot 300. I was like, wow. um, who's your pick to win the USBC Masters? Oh, geez. um, I mean, there's so many good bowlers out there. EJ Tackett is probably the number one player. You got Simonson, who's great. I wouldn't count Jason out. I know he's not bowled quite as well as to be expected the last couple of years, but I know he still has a strong desire to win. And then you got you got like 25 other guys that are right there, and you got another 50 guys that might do something. You never know. I mean, last year nobody knew who the winner was going to be, and he was a no-name guy, and that kind of happens in the Masters format. So anything can happen there. You got to bowl well, and you got to get a few breaks, especially in that format. Let's see. Double question: are you still using the Brunswick rangefinder for spares? Yes. And what weight? 15 pounds. Are you still using? Let's see. Who was the guy that always gave you the most trouble on the lanes? There's a lot of guys. I mean, when you're bowling on tour, those guys are really good. That's just it. And when you're bowling a match play, the guys that make match play, they're all good. Now the guys who are making the TV shows, they're obviously a little bit better. And so if you're bowling somebody who makes a TV show, they're good. Period. Um, you know, I think I did win more games than I lost on TV, but on the title matches, I think I was 47 and 47. So there is that. What was your speed on the first and the last two tours? It wasn't showing on a monitor. Oh, I guess you're talking about the last two tournaments, the last few tournaments. My ball speed's definitely lower. It's probably, and the thing is it actually registered about 12, 15 feet in front of the pins, and actually slows down probably another mile and a half mile before it gets to the pins. But where it registers the ball speed, it's like 12 and a half, 13. Now we're bowling on the lanes were hooking quite a bit this last week, so my ball speed was normally about 12 and a half. Sometimes it was 13. Every once in a while I got over 13, but that was kind of rare. My spare shots actually were about 16 most of the time. I actually had a couple that got well over 16, which I was surprised at because, but it used to be 18 on my spares and used to be 15, 15 and a half on my strike ball. So it's definitely down, a couple miles an hour. But my shoulder, I just don't want to hurt my shoulder again. I don't have full range of mobility. I can get my arm up here. Before it was up here, so it's getting better. But it's definitely not like my left arm. I can get my left arm straight up. When I can do that, that's I'll feel like I'm 100%. As far as that goes. But right now, I just don't want to hurt myself, so I'm going to throw the ball nice and slow. And so to bowl well on a couple of shorter patterns was kind of nice for me. But I'm using balls that don't hook as much. This last week, the 37-foot pattern, I threw one shot with a reactive ball, and that was on a fill ball because like I'm using the Crown 78U most of the time, and I actually threw the Black Pearl a couple of shots on the last match that I had. But yeah, it was just And it was funny because my low ball speed, my ball was actually hooking on the back end. I kept telling, the guys, I'm like, wow, this is like the 80s, getting the ball to hook the urethane ball. Good point with five on a pair. Question with my wife: how were you able to stay consistent for so long on tour? What were the keys to consistency? That's hard to say. I just like to compete. I mean, when I first went out on tour when I was 23, there were very few guys that were over 40 that were still bowling full time on the tour. So I kind of figured by the time I got to 40, I'd probably be retired. And I was player of the year in my 40s. So and I actually stayed on tour longer than that. When I was 50, I was still I was player of the year again, which is I'm very proud of that. But after that, those next 10, 12 years that I bowled on tour weren't very good. So probably should have retired earlier than that. However, with the schedule the way it wasn't like it was when I was first on tour where we had 30 something weeks. If we'd have had a schedule like that, I probably would have retired a lot sooner. But as it was basically about a 7 week commitment, and I knew that bowling with these young guys was going to help me stay more competitive bowling with the older guys on the senior tour. So I kind of did both, and I think that helped me stay more competitive that way. But but unfortunately, I just wasn't super competitive. I kept joking. I'd set up clinics and stuff, and I said I got to pay for my bowling habit. So. Um, is your strike shot a little slower? If so, what is your RG and diff? The RG and diff is different bowling balls. I mean, they're all different. Do you have a favorite new ball with the Brunswick Brands release day and best? Well, the problem is like I said, my ball speed's kind of low, so I'm really not, I'm having trouble using the quote more aggressive stuff. Now, if I was throwing the ball firmer, I'd probably like some of the more aggressive stuff. I do like the danger zone a little bit, but I haven't really used it a whole lot because, when I get in the tournaments, the lane patterns are calling more for, not are not liking. I'm not liking to hook the ball a lot, so I do have, I do have my mic on, making sure you guys can hear me. Um, so I tend to be using the urethane balls a little bit more, and it's pretty sad. I actually meant to bring the my old hammer NU, the blue ball. I drilled up the gray, the NU2. I drilled that up left-handed. I've got another one coming for me to drill right-handed, but I meant to bring it this last week. I might have still been too strong to bowl with even on this pattern. So it's hard to say. I do like the left-handed. I got my average up to about 200, despite how bad I bowled last week. That The NU2 is one of my. I really like that ball, and I've got the Hammer Zero Mercy solid. I like that a little bit, despite it. I'm picking off the 7 pin last week. I don't think I've got that video on the YouTube channel yet. That'll be coming up pretty soon. But it was like I'm not sure how exactly I did that. What are so right? I guess my favorite ball right now is actually the Crown 78U, and that kind of sounds odd, but yeah, I really like it, that ball. When you got a little lower ball speed, you got to do what you got to do. Are the PBA 50 and PBA 50 World Series bowling in the same house? I don't believe so. I think they're in different bowling centers. Might come and watch. Never have watched the pros before. I suggest everybody. They all like to watch the TV show. Like that's if they want to come down to watch something live, they want to watch it. And don't get me wrong, that is exciting. But if you go watch the qualifying rounds and the match play rounds and stuff like that, you're gonna see so much more that's going on, and you're gonna see all these guys that you've never seen before that are very good bowlers, and they bowl bad games, and the good guys bowl bad games too. Those younger guys, people you never heard of bowling great games and stuff. There's so much talented players out there. I really recommend, you see all these different guys that are you know, trying to make a living, especially on the regular tour. On the senior tour, they're not trying to make a living, but they're out there competing. They all want to beat each other. But it's definitely, definitely a lot more going on than people realize. Some people I think just think that they bowl 10 games and then they're on TV or something. No, they bowl a lot of games. What's my opinion on string pins? I think that's going to be the future of the bowling. Um, um, I've been in a couple of houses recently where they probably need string pins. The mechanics just can't keep up with all the breakdowns that are happening, and unfortunately, mechanics are rare supply these days, and it's just a lot more efficient now. That being said, I think the string pins can be modified a little bit. Now, you may have seen, I bowled at Dan Knowlton's bowling center he has at his house, or not his house, it's actually his garage, but and he's got string pins, and I think that those string pins actually are very good. The strings don't really seem to knock the pins down. Now, the pin carry is different, no doubt about it. But if you throw good shots, you can get strikes. You can throw, you can even, go light in a pocket and carry shots. And so it's like a regular tin pin. And to me, the better bowler is still going to be the better bowler. It's not like all of a sudden the best bowler in the world is not going to be very good anymore. That's not the case. It's just I think it's still going to be the better bowlers are the better bowlers. So. Let's see. How your first 300? How old were you? I think I was 20 or 21. Trying to remember. Yeah, I think I was 20. I don't know the date. How's that? um, it probably was 1979. No, might have. No, probably in 1980 when I bowled my first 300. Probably in the early spring, and then I bowled my first PBA 300 in October of 1980. Have you had a chance to watch the CW broadcast? What do you think of their presentation? Yeah, I've watched them. I think they're all right. I think Kyle's done a pretty decent job. Yeah. Have you signed picture? Yeah, I have your signed picture next to my computer here. Was wondering what you think of the PBA so far on the net CW. Well, I just said that. Yeah, I think they're doing all right. Do you still play horseshoes? I do. I mentioned that earlier. I play competitively left-handed. My right arm doesn't want to cooperate very well right-handed, and it's not just because of the shoulder. Before the shoulder injury, I was struggling pitching horseshoes right-handed too. So the last couple of years, I've actually been competing left-handed most of the time. I actually started competing a lot left-handed over 20 years ago because I got so frustrated with my right-handed pitching. And 2000 from 2003 and four, I averaged under 70% right-handed at the World Tournament. For me at that time, was just absolutely awful. And I at one time thought pitching under 80% was really bad. And here I am not pitching 70%. And I thought, if I pitch left-handed, I might be able to do that, or pitch almost as good and probably more fun. And I actually averaged over 72% both years pitching left-handed. And then it was back and forth. I'd get frustrated one, go back the other, go get frustrated, go back the other. It was kind of off and on. And it's just the way it is. So they need to release the crush R in honor of you. I've I keep saying that's my favorite ball of all time, but the other thing is that ball actually fell apart pretty good. So, and it may have been why it was so good. I don't know, but I do remember it was a ball that definitely it kind of crumbled pretty quick. So, what speed is considered low? Well, now that it depends when they measure ball speed, the ball speed actually slows down from the time you let go of it to the time it hits the pins. And it can slow down 3 to 4 miles an hour depending on how much friction there is. The more friction there is, the more, in other words, the more hook there is, the more the ball's going to slow down. So if you had a lane that had 55 feet of oil, the ball probably wouldn't slow down very much, especially if you used a plastic ball. Now, if you got a ball with a lot of grit on it, it's going to slow down more. And if you've got a shorter pattern, it's definitely going to slow down even more. So, but if a ball, basically when a ball rolls out, that's like the lowest ball speed that it's going to ever have. It'll continue that speed it'll slow down obviously because of other friction, but that's kind of the end all speed. So whether it's 60 feet of oil or what 60 feet of oil doesn't make sense because that's not going to the ball's not going to roll out by the 60 feet. But if a ball rolls out at 50 feet or rolls out at 60 feet, the ball speed is still basically going to be the same. Now it depends on how you release the ball. Like guys, like when I throw a spare shot, I release it differently and I throw it differently. So my ball speed is going to be a lot higher with a spare shot than it is a strike ball, and that's the way most pros are. They tend to throw their spare shots a lot harder. So it for the tour players, they're probably letting go at like 19, 20 miles an hour. And by the time it hits the pins, it might be 17, 16 miles an hour. My ball speed might be 16, 17 at the release point. It's going to be 14. Well, right now it's like 13 to 12 miles an hour. So or 12 and a half. So yeah, it's not very much. Uh, why did you decide to bowl two-handed? Well, when Jason Bomani and a couple others were, and Osku were bowling on tour, bowling two-handed, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I know Chuck Landy bowled a little bit on tour way back in the '80s, but he wasn't very successful, and so it wasn't never really thought about it back then. Um, but when they were doing that, and the rev rates by then in the 2000s, rev rates were getting pretty starting to get pretty high, and obviously they've gotten higher since then. But I thought, well, I could try that, and I was able to do it without falling over and hurting myself. So over the years, I just got to do it a little bit more, and I would kind of do it at the end of the tournament when I was kind of out of it and didn't want to break things. So I was trying to have fun, and then I finally decided, maybe I should work on it a little bit. And the problem is, I've never really worked on it enough, but I decided to bowl league that way, and I actually averaged over 230 1 year on a house shot. House shot. Last year, I think I only averaged 220. I'm on the house shot here, bowling two-handed, and that was kind of with a semi-hurt shoulder. Um, I haven't tried bowling two-handed since I've had the surgery. I think I'll wait until I feel like my shoulder is completely healed before I try something like that. The backswing, and with the low ball speed, that's definitely going to be death with that. So I don't see the point in it. But basically, it's to get the higher rev rate, to be able to hook the ball more. There are times that that extra hook and rev rate sees the pattern a lot stronger. There's a reason why guys hook the ball, because it works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it. So that's kind of the necessity. But the problem is you still need to be accurate, and I'm not quite as accurate or or as much power as the guys on tour. So, but it was a lot more power than my one-handed delivery. So let's see. Where is it? Have you watched Born to Bowl? Yes, I did. I watched the second episode. I really enjoyed this. The first episode was kind of I don't know, but the second episode I really enjoyed. A little bit of swearing in there, which I understand. I've been in those moments, and that was kind of I totally understand that. Just that's the guys are competing, they get frustrated, and they're all trying to win. Trust me, they're all trying to win. And they might be friends off the lanes, but when they're bowling against each other, they want to beat each other really good. So, have you thrown any of the track stealth balls? Not lately. So, the PBA also needs a WR oil pattern. Well, they asked me about doing an oil pattern. I said, well, let me design it. They said no. I said, well, then don't put my name on one. So they let me design it. They can put my name on it. Till then, I don't want to put my name on it. How well do you follow the women's game? Who's your favorite on the PWBA tour? I like to watch the ladies bowl. Unfortunately, I don't watch them all the time, but I do watch a little bit. Um, I I'm pretty good friends with a few of them, because I'm a little older now, so I don't know as many of the young ones. But down here in Florida, I do get a chance to bowl with and against Verity. I remember the first time I crossed with her in a tournament in Orlando, just a little local sweeper. I'm like, holy moly! Watching this young girl that just hooked the ball as much as she did. She got a great game. I love the way she throws the ball. I like the two-hander from Sweden, Johansson. I think she throws the ball phenomenal. I think she's probably going to be one of the main players in the next couple of years. But it's hard to say. It's not all about power. Liz Johnson, she's one of the best ever from the ladies. A lot of people call her the GOAT, but I don't know. There's this other lady who bowled back in the '50s and '60s who was pretty decent. I think she won the women's US Open like 8 or 10 times or something like that. Marion Ladowicz. You might want to look her up sometime. Um, let's see. How well do you? Let's see. What or when is your next tournament? I was actually scheduled to bowl a tournament this coming up weekend in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. I just bowled in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and my plan was to stay up in that area and do some clinics and stuff and make some money and stuff. Unfortunately, I wasn't very good at setting those up, so that didn't happen. And so I think I'm actually going to drop out of the tournament, and I'm actually got a clinic set up in the Raleigh, North Carolina area next Monday, and I think they're going to work on it, doing it on Sunday. So, and if I was really smart, I would just do that. I can make a lot more money doing clinics than I can bowling tournaments. But I like to compete, so I don't know. It's the way it is. So my next bowling tournament or big tournament's probably going to be here at the Villages, but this Sunday I'll probably look and see if there's some little scratch tournament or something I can bowl. I definitely need to get more practice, and I think the best practice is bowling in tournaments. Of course, it doesn't help when you throw a lot of bad shots, but I definitely need to practice and get some good practice in at tournaments. So enjoyed watching your segments about when you showed people your RV and what life was like on a PBA tour. Do you still have an RV, and how much would you say the way of traveling has changed? Well, back when I bowled on tour, we had more of a real tour, if that makes any sense. When I first started bowling, there was 30 something tournaments a year, and I think it got to like 36 tournaments a year. Um, so back then, having an RV made a lot more sense for me. We could stay, most of the time we could stay in a parking lot of the bowling center. So it was very, very convenient. I could bowl a block, come back, take rest, and then come back and bowl the second round that day and not have to worry about, well, gee, I'm 15, 20 minutes to the hotel and go eat or whatever. And it's very convenient in that sense. But economically, probably wasn't as economical as a lot of people think. RVs are a little expensive. There's always something going on with them. You got to be able to fix stuff. I'm not great at that. I'm okay, but some of the stuff you definitely need to take, and then always there's always some sort of stupid mishap that you have. I've had quite a few of those. And it just so nowadays I don't know that it's necessary or as convenient for somebody on tour. I think there's probably one or two. There's quite a few guys on the senior tour, but you're talking about guys that tend to have, it's not their livelihood. It's more of a, leisure thing, and they're, trying to enjoy life kind of thing, as opposed to the guys on tour, the regular tour, they're trying to make a living and stuff. So it's a different thing. I don't have an RV now. It's been, I don't know, almost 10 years since I had one. And so I wouldn't mind having one, but they're a little expensive, and I don't see the need for it. But I don't know. I take the dogs with me. That's that's kind of an inconvenience right now, because before I never had any pets, but now I do. And so my wife isn't able to travel with me because she stays home with the pets and stuff. So is what it is. So congrats on the next phase of your comeback. How tight of a fit should a thumb have for comfort? I've heard different arguments on this. My opinion is you want a fairly tight thumb hole. When I do my clinics, I actually throw a shot with just my thumb in the hole. I can pick the ball up pretty easily with just put my thumb in there and pick the ball up. I do pinch my thumb just a tiny bit, but not a lot. I don't have to go like that to hold on to it. Like I said, I can actually throw the ball with just my thumb in there. And the first thing I ask is, do you have tape in your thumb hole? And probably 30% of the bowlers, amateur bowlers, say they have tape in the thumb hole. And I tell them pretty much every pro that uses their thumb has tape in their thumb hole. And the reason why is if you've got a nice tight thumb hole, which is what you need, and you bowl a little extra, and now your thumb swells and you can't get your thumb in a hole, you're pretty much SOL. So for me, I have it's an interchangeable thumb, and inside of that, I have a exactification, a mold, which is a copy of a thumb hole that I like. And with that copy, I still have about 7 or 8 pieces of tape inside that thumb hole. And the reason why is I want to be able to take tape out and still have several pieces of tape in there. I don't want to go from 1 or 2 pieces of tape and go down to no pieces of tape, because that ball material, that plug material is completely different than the tape material. And I don't have to worry about that. So I kind of like that. People say, "Oh, I got tape on my thumb." Well, it's not the same thing. The tape on your thumb is to kind of protect your thumb. The tape in your thumb hole is to adjust the size of the thumb hole itself. So I can make that thumb hole tighter or looser just by taking tape out, putting tape in, and it's not just because a pro shop wants to sell you more tape, but pretty much every pro that uses their thumb uses tape. Um, do you ever have to hold back laughter during some of Pete Weber's antics? Um, yes and no. Do you have a favorite bowler growing up? When I was young, watching the guys on TV, I just remember watching, a bunch of them. And, Johnny Petraglia was one, of Don Johnson. Remember a guy from Arizona, Wayne Zahn. And then later on it was Earl Anthony, Mark Roth, Marshall Holman, Tommy Hudson. So I got to bowl against a few of those guys, but and Dick Weber, obviously. So, are you still the only one to make the Big Four on TV? I am. Big deal. I lost the game by 20 pins. Everybody makes a big deal about it. I lost the game by 20 pins. It's I got no bonus for it. They show it all the time. I don't get any I don't get any revenue from that. You remember Landmark Lanes in Pomona, California? That's where I bowled in my first league as a kid. Yeah, I bowled there. It was the Phillips were very nice people. They let me practice there when I was starting to get better. And the only thing is I didn't really care for how they did the lanes. They tend to make the lanes very easy. I remember bowling a little sweeper tournament. This was right before the tour started, and one of the tour players was there, and he's like, "Hey, I want to bowl anybody." I said, "Well, I'll bowl you, but let's cross wipe the lanes." So we cross wiped the lanes, and I bowled him, and I managed to beat him. But yeah, it was a good place to practice, and it was kind of funny because when I went to college, I was going to Cal Poly Pomona, which is just up the road from there, and they one of the the physical ed classes they had bowling. I said, well, I'm already a PBA member by the time I'm going to school at Cal Poly Pomona. I'm like, well, okay, if I take this class, it'll help me kind of get out there and practice a little bit. Well, unfortunately, the first 2 weeks of January, I had to go. I went and bowled a couple of national stops because they started in California. They started in Southern California and Northern California and Vegas. So that's what it was, Vegas. So I missed those 2 weeks from school and come back to school, and the teacher's like, "You missed the first 2 weeks. The best grade you can get's a B." I'm like, "Wait, I was just at a professional bowling tournament." He says, "I don't care. Doesn't matter. The best." And this guy probably averaged 150. I'm already bowling PBA tournaments, and I'm like, okay. I said, I guess this is going to look good on my resume, so I dropped the class. I thought that was kind of amusing that the best grade I was going to get was a B, and here I'm a professional bowler, even though I'm in college. Um, will you be doing any clinics here in Florida? Because I'd sign up in a second. I'm just up in Jacksonville. Um, I do a few here in Florida. I just, my problem is figuring out where to do it and when to do it and getting them set up. That's my biggest problem. Um, Thanks for answering. I usually have 5, 6 pieces of tape in, but I can't pick it up with my thumb too loose. So what you just said, I'll try it again. Thanks. Yeah. And the other thing is if you keep dropping the ball, and I've done it with my clinics, I see people dropping the ball, says, put a piece of tape in it. Put a piece of tape in it. Some people do actually just drop the ball, even though it's snug, but I don't want to see the ball go up in the air. Right? But if you're dropping the ball, I'm not a big fan of that. So I like to get that ball a little bit on the lane, usually a couple feet over the foul line, because they don't oil, you know, especially at Bolero, they don't oil the first 18 inches. It's like an insurance thing. But some people drop the ball before the foul line. There's no oil there. That ball's going to instantly hook when it hits the lane. That's not always desired. Aside from yourself, since I think everyone would put you on there without a doubt, some people wouldn't. Um, who would you say is your Mount Rushmore bowlers, past or present? I'd go with guys that were Player of the Year like 6 times or more. So you got Don Carter, Earl Anthony, Jason Belmonte. And then, I don't know, you got toss up between Mark Roth and EJ Tackett. But EJ Tackett's probably going to end up having a better career than Mark Roth. And Mark Roth was very, very good. So it's really kind of hard to kick Mark Roth off that top 4 or 5 or whatever. But those are my picks, and then Dick Weber. He had the most titles until Earl Anthony passed him with the most titles. So and I think he was considered the top 4 of the 2000s by the USBC. So, let's. How do you feel about taping the front or the back of the thumb hole? Um, I wouldn't add tape to the inside. So the inside, I wouldn't add tape. I might put tape in there to get a little good grip. I actually use cork on my right hand. Left hand, I got tape on there, so I got. But right-handed, I actually use cork on this part which you don't see very much. In fact, I don't even know if pro shops even sell it much anymore. Um, I got it. They gave me a big old bag of it years ago. I'm not even sure where they're all at. I might be getting down to just a few pieces now. I super glue it to a piece of tape and then I put it on the inside, and it does wear out a little bit. But then I put most of my tape on the back, so it's going back here, and I actually put it in a semicircle, so I don't put them right on top of each other. So I'll go left, right, middle, and I use 3/4 inch most of the time, and then I go to 1/2 inch. And I know they sell 1 inch, and I guess people think, oh, it's a bigger piece of tape. I'm going to get more for my money, so I'm going to get the 1 inch piece of tape. Putting a 1 inch piece of tape in a thumb hole, unless you've got a huge, huge thumb, is not a simple process. 3/4 inch is going to go in a lot easier, and especially for those that have smaller hands and fingers and stuff, thumbs, a 1/2 inch piece, 1/2 inch is probably gonna be better. I mean, I've got arthritis in my fingers, so I got big knuckles. I try to help people put their tape in their thumb. I can't even put my pinky in their thumb hole sometimes because my finger's so big. So yeah, there's no way you're putting a 1 inch piece of tape in some of those holes, but definitely go with a smaller. And I use 3/4 and a half, and I'll actually, if it's just a hair off, I might take a 3/4 out and put a 1/2 inch, or take 3/4 out and push two halves in or something like that, just to modify it just a tiny bit. Years ago, I see guys, they take a piece of tape and they'd strip it, and so you get these little tiny strips and put them in that way. So I use IT thumbs too. One is snug, and another is larger with tape, and I just adjust as needed. Yeah, I've heard of people doing that, but to me, that's a lot more trouble. I'd rather get that same. In fact, I need to do that. I lazy and haven't done that. I actually ordered some stuff to make more molds, but part of it, I want to make some molds for my left hand, but I'm still waiting to get a good feel for my left hand. From one week to the next, it's like, ew. And then last week was horrible. I had a pain on the inside of my thumb, which today it doesn't feel too bad. Of course, I'm not bowling today, so but yeah, I actually need to make a few more thumb molds for my right hand so I can put them in the. It's like because I've got two right now, and I haven't had a problem with it. But one of these days, one's going to break, and I'm going to be down to one, and that's not good. So, and nothing lasts forever. So I need to do that before it bites me in the butt. So. Why do some telecasts of PBA have mainly left-handed bowlers? Well, there are some that have mainly right-handed bowlers. Different lane conditions get different results, and sometimes the left-handers like the condition, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the left-handers just bowl really well. My very first TV show, there was only one left-hander who was in the top 24. He led the tournament. That was Earl Anthony. So, it's just that's part of bowling. And there's just the guys who do the lane conditions and set them up, they're trying to make it as fair as they can for everybody. The biggest complaint, obviously, is left to right. Back in the old days, it was kind of for the straighter players and the hook. Now everybody hooks the ball, so it's you don't really. I don't think they're really worried about so much the straighter players, but I mean, they talk about the guys with low rev rates, but they still all hook the ball. The guys with the 380 rev rates, that's way higher than back when I was on tour. There was maybe a couple guys. There might have been one or two guys that had a rev rate that high, but that was very few. Now that's just commonplace, or that's actually, like I said, the low rev rates on the national tour. Did you ever bowl at the Bowling in Montclair? I did. That's where I first started bowling league when I moved to Southern California. I bowled one year when I was like 11, and then I started bowling again when I was a senior in high school. I actually joined a summer league that summer, and then I was bowling a fall league up at Foothill Bowl in Auburn. And then I had appendicitis. My parents had moved to Southern California. Ended up moving down to Southern California. Went back into college. I was going to Chaffee Junior College, which is in Rancho Cucamonga. And then the next year, I actually started bowling again. One of the gentlemen who was worked at the back with one of the mechanics in the back was also a horseshoe player. So I joined his team. It was a 885 scratch 5-man team. There was a couple guys that averaged about 200, and halfway through the season, they started making the lanes easy, and I went from a 175 average. That summer, I averaged 224 in the league with a black beauty. Let's see. Is there anything different you would have done on your last shot in the 299 TV game? I hit the pocket. I left to week 10. Yeah, I would have loved to strike. I didn't do that though. I had the front 10 against Pete in Japan and smashed a 7 pin. So you throw the shots the best you can. The good shots don't always strike. The bad shots don't always not strike. When did you notice guys' rev rates increase so much? One-handed, I mean. I don't remember guys throwing 455 in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, you're right. I don't think they were. There was a guy, Kyle Shedd, and there was another guy, Ed Wallace, that had a pretty good rev rate. Um, and it was funny, Ed had, I think he used a conventional grip. I just remember him, hooking the ball quite a bit. But there was a couple guys, but the rev rates are probably still in the 300. Kyle might have been close to 400. Hard to say. I don't know that they measured the rev rates as much back then. But he definitely threw a lot of ball back then. But the lane conditions and everything, they weren't necessarily geared for those guys with the high rev rates. And then later on, you had guys like Jimmy Keith and Kelly Kaufman and Bob Vesby, and Chris Warren. Chris Warren, he pretty much does what Jay Tackett does. It may be just a tiny bit less, but right there with him. Nowadays, Chris over 60 years of age, he uses a conventional grip, and he still probably has a 450 rev rate. Um, let's see. What would you say earlier? Yeah, EJ Tackett is insane the way he's bowling now. Seems like you can't miss making a show in general. Do you see him passing you total titles down the road? Um, the problem is they don't bowl as many tournaments as we did, so it's going to be a little more of a challenge for him. But he's got way more titles than I did at his age. I mean, when I was 35, I had 15 titles, and I think he's still under. I think he's like 32, and he's got like 29 or something like that. I won most of my titles after I was 35. And Earl Anthony was the same way. He didn't go on tour till he was 31. He bowled a few tournaments, when he was in his early 20s, and then didn't come back out until he was 31. And then he won. He was Player of the Year 6 times after that. So it's not just guys in their 20s and 30s. Guys in their 40s can still bowl. I think some guys kind of get a little wore out mentally and physically. Um, I was able to still bowl decently. I did some things that some of the other guys didn't want to do, so I was pretty fortunate in that regard. Um, any tips on dealing with someone throwing urethane on a house shot? Team into it for first time ever and carry down kicked my butt. Well, the thing is urethane carry down, depending on how they're doing it. If they're hitting a pocket and they're throwing the ball straighter than you should love it. If you throw the ball straighter than those guys and they're throwing urethane, you're gonna have a little more trouble. But usually the urethane ball, if you can hook it more than a guy who's using urethane, you're gonna be golden. That's you know so it, typically it's gonna hurt the guys that go a lot straighter. That's kind of all I can say. I remember several years ago I was bowling a match, and I was bowling. It was just the best 2 out of 3, and it was up in Portland, Maine, and they only got a few lanes, so they did like half the matches, and then they did like quarter matches. So they did like 16. There was 8 matches, and then 8 matches, and 8 matches, and 8 matches. Well, anyway, so they didn't re-oil after the first round of matches. So I'm bowling on the same pair of lanes that Jason Belmonte and Sam Cooley bowled on, and I think they both used urethane. And my first shot in practice, the ball kind of hooked, and then it went straight, and I'm like, oh boy. So I could either hit the pocket light in the pocket, or I could go high, and it's not really. And I was kind of fooling around with two-handed at the time. I thought about throwing two-handed, but I figured just kind of hang in there. And I ended up bowling Jesper Svensson, and I was very fortunate to beat him. I don't know, because I really had a very poor reaction. I almost made the TV show. I think I finished tied for third in that match, in that tournament. Lost to Dick Allen the semifinal match, and then he actually won the tournament the next game, but next match. But yeah, that was yeah. It is what it is. But when the guys are using reactive balls, the guys that hook the ball, they don't make the lanes easier for the guys that can throw it straighter either. So it doesn't really matter, how they're breaking the lane down. It tends to help the guys go hook the ball more when the lanes break down. And that's kind of why the guys hook the ball. They all know that. Get left of everybody. Hook the ball more than everybody. You gotta you're typically going to have an advantage, but you still got to control it. So, and that, that's kind of the basic reason why all these guys on tour hook the ball, because they all learned a long time ago that hooking the ball is a good thing. Who do you see winning more titles overall by the time their career is finished, EJ or Jason? Um, well, Jason's got the disadvantage of living in Australia. That's a huge thing. He's got 4 kids, and family out there, and it's gotta be really tough for him to when he's on the road. He's on the road, 4 months in a row or whatever, away from his family, and that's just something I never had to deal with. Even guys that did have family that they either took them with them or they could see them a while. It's a very different situation now. Um, EJ's done very well, and EJ's probably going to have more titles. Is he going to get more majors? Probably not. I mean, 15 major titles, that's unbelievable that Jason got that many. What he did in major titles. What's odd is he doesn't have more regular titles. You know, he was able to do so well in major tournaments, and that's kudos to him for doing that. He's had a great career and great bowler, and I don't think he's finished. So, which PBA title do you cherish the most? Well, you always like everyone, doesn't matter. But without the first national title, you don't know that you're going to win a second one. So when I first came on tour, I had no inkling that I was going to have the career that I had. I thought it would be really nice to make some money and do that. Maybe win a couple titles. That would be nice. But until you actually win, you don't know it's going to happen. So winning that first one was obviously huge. But every title after that is huge. They're all great. It doesn't matter. I probably the win in the U.S. Opens because those are normally a little more challenging lane conditions. Unfortunately, the one tournament I bowled probably the best in the U.S. Open, I didn't win that one. Earl Anthony did the same thing. I think he led it back-to-back years by 500 and something pins and didn't win either one of those because you kind of had to win it twice. That's the way the formats are. That's kind of sucks. That's the way it is, but that's what it is. Yeah, the one year in '93, I led it by 500 something pins and bowled a decent game on TV. Got beat though. That's the way it goes. Let's see. Don't forget the front 10 against Danny Wiseman in '96 when you left a solid 8. Um, yeah, well, yeah, that it is what it is. Apparently Randy Peterson's not the only one to leave a solid 8. Um, but yeah, it's that's part of bowling. You throw good shots, and sometimes they strike. More times they're going to strike than not, but they don't always strike. Will you be coming up to Minnesota in a month or so? I'm planning on bowling the World Series of Bowling. Yes, hopefully my bowling improves because if it doesn't, that's not going to be good for me. Who do you think has the most unconventional approach release that you bowled against? That I bowled against. Well, Ron Williams had an unusual style. Scott Devers had an unusual style. People say I had an unusual style. Let's see. I didn't bowl against Lou Campy. Never actually saw him bowl. He bowled off the wrong foot. We did have a guy or two that bowled on the. There was a guy that bowled on the wrong foot back then. See, I don't know those 2 guys, but they were both very good bowlers. So there was another guy, Doug Laird, who never won any titles, but when I first came out on tour, had a very impressive. And his arm swing was really big and back, and just and when he was young. And then I think I saw him 20 or 30 years later, and he looked totally different. But that happens to everybody. Gonna miss you at the TSE this year. Yeah, Adam. And Fancy says hi. Um, yeah, I just it doesn't make any sense for me to go up there. You ever a victim of a Mike Miller prank or have a good story of one of his pranks? Fortunately, no. I didn't room with him, so I wasn't privy to some of his pranks to his roommates. Just want to say appreciate you doing these Q&A, sharing your knowledge. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. Been neglecting my Facebook page. Let's see. Do you still throw horseshoes? Yes, I do. Hope to see you back in Sarasota soon. Maybe catch you at the villages. Cheers, Harry. Thanks, Harry. Yeah, I don't know. It's Not sure when I'll get to Sarasota, never know. Except for the blue nitro, I was never a fan of ebonite products during the urethane era. Based on how good you scored in the mid 90s, once equipment got stronger, do you think you would have had one more in the 80s? And why is it not showing more? Oh, in the early 90s, if you would have had used like Blue Hammer UDOT. Um, I bowled very well those years. I just wasn't winning tournaments. That's the only thing. I think I have the most title or most TV finals in a row without a title, and not say in a row, but the most, over 4.5 year period where I didn't win a tournament. I think I had 25 TV shows where I didn't win an actual title. Um, so. How many years have you been bowling? I've been bowling professionally since 1980, and I bowled probably 2.5 years before that, I guess. One year when I was like 11, and I started bowling when I was 19, 17, 19, but I didn't bowl for about like a year. So with lower ball speed, should you go pin down? I haven't done that. So with the low scoring title match this week, I'm curious if you remember what the most difficult lane conditions you won under. I don't know what my lowest winning score is, honestly. I'm not sure if I won with a 180 or not. I may have on a national tour. Um, just sometimes, and my guess is it looked like Dave Kroll just threw some bad shots out of the gate, and then I think he tried using a reactive ball, which was just not the right play for him. Then we went back to the urethane. Then actually hit the pocket a couple times, and he had wrecked a solid 10 and a 4.9. And by then, Marshall had thrown a couple of horrible shots, and then he threw a couple of great shots to get strikes and put a lot of pressure on David. And unfortunately, David just wasn't able to, get things going again. So problem is the games are so short. It's 10 frames, and you come in with a mindset of this is what I got to do, and if you throw a couple of bad shots, which is real easy to do under the pressure of what's going on out there, um, all these, I kind of laugh at all these people who say, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're shooting those kind of scores." Yeah, those are bad scores. Don't get me wrong. Don't they definitely, and they will both agree they both horrible games, but you still got to get there. Those other guys that say, "Oh, I would never shoot 130," it's because you're never gonna shoot. You're never getting on TV. That's why you're never gonna shoot 130 on TV. So it yeah, the lane conditions sometimes get a little tricky, and if you don't play lanes just right, they were talking about, I was kind of chastising one of the guys at the senior tournament. He's like, "Oh, they're bowling, such easy lane conditions." I says, "Yeah, go ahead and bowl on them. See if you can average your 240 you average in league. You ain't gonna do it. No way." And he said, "Yeah, I know that, but they're still easy." I said, "Well, those guys are also really, really, really good. Yeah, scores were, you know, a little higher than normal, but those guys are really good." And then you see what happens when all of a sudden they get just a tiny bit tricky. All of a sudden, wow. And Mike Zawacki, 800 on strings. Very nice. Off topic, still playing competitive horseshoes, and how are you still playing? I do play horseshoes competitively, and I'm doing okay. Have you tried rolling two-handed? But I can't seem to get my ball speed up. Any suggestions? Well, I don't know how old you are, Tim, but bowling two-handed is not the same as one-handed. But basically, for me, when I teach it, yeah, the concept's kind of the same. Get the ball in the swing early. It makes your feet go faster. The faster your feet go, the more ball speed you can get. Now, with bowling two-handed, there's two ways kind of to get the ball speed. One is to get high. Same thing in one-handed bowling. A higher backswing, that's going to help you create more speed at the bottom. And the other thing is get your feet moving. So get the feet moving, rotate, and get that ball in the backswings. And the thing is you just got to do it. And then I just tell people, just throw a ball hard, just throw it hard, just throw it hard, just throw it hard, just throw it hard, and keep throwing it hard. And pretty soon you're going to throw it harder and harder, and you get used to it. So it's like anything else, it takes practice. It just doesn't happen overnight. And if you're older, getting that ball speed is not easy. Pete Weber put sugar in your gas tank. Well, never he didn't. So I don't know what that's about. What are your thoughts on the one-handed no thumb style like Tom Doherty or Mike Miller? That's not for me. My wrist. Well, that's why I don't bowl. That's why one of the reasons why I don't throw the ball like that. I don't hook the ball right-handed very much because my wrist does not like getting that position. So those guys, they that's a lot of strength on their wrist to do that. My wrist just doesn't like it. If I throw a couple shots like that, after a few shots, I wouldn't be able to bowl anymore. And what these young guys do to their wrist when they're throwing it, that yo-yo release, I got no chance doing that. My wrist would say no. Now two-handed, it's not as much stress on your wrist. You still get the strong position, but you get a little help with that left hand to help you hold on to the ball that way. And I don't care what these people say that two-handed bowling is cheating. It's not cheating. It's another way to throw the ball. You know what? Maybe we were all doing it wrong. So, um, what adjustment you do if you're throwing reactive and another team member throwing your thing? What move do you do? Um, I don't really make a move. I just keep throwing the shots where I throw it. If the ball hooks, if anything, I'm going to get a ball that hooks more. So, would it be wise to increase your backswing to get more speed? That's one way to get more ball speed. I just talked about that. Um, and the other way is to get your feet moving faster. One way to do that, get the ball in the swing earlier. That's what I teach when I teach. That's what I teach good timing. You watch the guys on tour, they get the ball in the swing real early. And that's how they get those nice high backswings. So that's how it all works together. Oh, somebody, I think that was the same question. Let's see. Did you say you're not bowling Chambersburg? Um, I signed up for Chambersburg, but yeah, I'm planning on not going. They were trying to get me a clinic to go together, and they said they couldn't get anybody to do it. I'm like, this is, and since I didn't have anything else set up this last week, I actually came home. I'm actually home in Florida, and Chambersburg. That's like 880 miles or something like that, 900 miles. It doesn't make any sense to go up there, and just price of gas. Woo. And and then you're looking at 4 or 5 nights of hotel. I got to finish third place just to break even. And so, tell me a story about Tim Cobble. Um, we both won a tournament, same tournament. I won the national tournament. He won the senior tournament at the same house. How's that? When you lived in Stockton, where did you bowl? Normally, I practiced at Pacific Avenue Bowl. I didn't bowl any leagues when I lived in Stockton. And I had actually had people tell me, "Oh, I bowled league with you when you were a junior there." No, you didn't, because I didn't live there when I was a junior. I didn't start living there till I was 25. After I was on tour. But I used to practice at Pacific Avenue Bowl at West Lane once in a while. I think there was a third bowling center. I think I might have went there once. Enjoy the Q&As. Thank you. Do you think the PBA should have televised arena finals again? Um, I think if they could, they would. Setting it up in an arena is not a simple project. It costs lots of money, and it just all comes down to finances. Seems like your left arm would bend back. Do you feel there was an advantage with that? I don't know what you're referring to there, Case. I'm not sure what that's reference to. What was your best win of all time? I Like I said, my first win. Without that, you don't know what else is going to happen. But any wins is awesome. Doesn't matter. Regional tournament, a little tiny tournament, a big tournament, they're all good. But the more prestigious ones, the majors and stuff, the U.S. Opens and stuff, But um, like I said, one of my best tournaments, I didn't win. You know, my U.S. Open, the one I led by 500 pins, 550 pins or whatever. What's your opinion on string pins? It's going to be the future of bowling. If you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. I guess you could buy a bowling center and put your machines in and get your mechanic, because that's the biggest thing. Is they're not making they're not making too many machines that don't use strings anymore. Not to mention, now you got to find a mechanic to work on them, and then you got to find parts to work on those machines. So got to kind of get used to it. Now, I do think they could make some small. I think they could make some adjustments. The string pins I bowled on, I bowled with Dan Olton at his place, and I thought those strings were very good. I saw very, very few, um, you know, effect from the strings actually knocking pins over, which is the biggest issue that people have. But the thing is I've seen people get strikes missing a head pin on free fall. Is that good? Bad? I don't know. I mean, so if a string knocks a pin down, is that if it happens to everybody, is that really bad or is that really good? I don't know. My opinion, the better bowler is still going to be the better bowler. So, you know, it, it, it's it's another thing out there. Like a lot of pros don't like bowling on twister pins, the plastic pins. You know, what's your favorite pattern to bowl on? Lately, not too much. Don't like bowling on house patterns; they're too wet dry. Most of the, and I just it has more to do with me throwing the ball well. I kind of like playing the outside lines, but they really don't put out patterns that play outside lines properly, in my opinion. So it's like you gotta, and it's like some of the oil patterns are too wet dry to play out there. And so if you miss a little right, it goes left. You miss a little left, it goes right. And then after the oil carries down, then you gotta hook it a lot. So it's just the lane conditions are just they don't play the way I'd like them to play. If that makes any sense. Do you still have any old Mo Rich around? No, I don't. Um, I'm on a Brunswick staff, so it doesn't make any sense for me to use that stuff. Thank you, Randy, Cindy. I'm bowling the Chambersburg tournament. Was looking forward to meeting you. Well, thanks. I've met you a few times. I believe you are the GOAT. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. Where was it? I don't. If you've asked this in passing, have you ever bowled candle pin, duck pin, five pin at all? I have bowled duck pin and candle pin. I have not bowled five pin. I've heard about it. One of the best horseshoe pitchers of all time, Elmer Hull, lived in Wellesley, Ontario, Canada, and was a five pin bowler. My understanding, he was a very, very, very good five pin bowler. Five pin, for those of us down here in the States that aren't familiar with it, it's basically a regulation lane, and there's only five pins. That's the name five pin. There's a pin kind of where the head pin is, and I think the pins are only 12 inches instead of 15 inches, but I might be mistaken on that. I think the balls are small. I don't know if they're maybe a little bigger than the duck pin balls. I'm not 100% sure, but they're not huge. They're not 10 pin bowling size. But I think they're balls that you can hold in your hand like this. And then there's a pin where the 7 pin and the 10 pin would be, and then there's a pin between the front one and the corner pins. So the one in front is worth 5 points, is my understanding. I might be wrong. And then the next two pins are worth 3 each, and then the two on the corner are worth 2 each. Total 15 points. If you get a strike, it's 15 plus the next two balls. So if you throw a perfect game, it's 450, which my understanding nobody's ever done. And I think probably similar to duck pin and candle pin, I don't think they care about oiling the lanes. I think they just throw it at it. But it sounds to me like with the five pins, you could actually go between the pins. You might not do it if you go straight, but if you hook the ball at it, you might be able to go between the pins a little bit. I don't know how they're numbered. I guess they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. I'm not a five pin bowler. I've just heard about it, and I just understand that the one gentleman, Elmer Hull, who is six-time world horseshoe champion and was one of the greatest ever. But he was, he was a bowler back in the 60s, a horseshoe pitcher back in the 60s and 70s and in early 80s. And he was getting to be older, so he didn't compete as much. But my understanding, he was a great five pin bowler. So let's see, where am I? Don Johnson had the figure eight backswing. I used to have a figure eight backswing. Unfortunately, I lost that, and I think that's been kind of my downfall the last 10 or 15 years, where I still done okay, but not as well as I used to do, if that makes any sense. So 10 frames on 2 lanes. It goes fast, 5 shots on each lane. Well, hopefully it's only 5 shots on each lane. When you're struggling, all of a sudden you're throwing 2 shots every shot. That's not good. That makes a lot more challenging. Do you ever play video games in general? The Brunswick Circuit Pro Bowling game from the late 90s. It's how I discovered you as a player when I was a kid. Oh, well, thank you. No, I didn't really play much video games with the bowling. The video games that come out with these days, the action shoot 'em up stuff, just doesn't do me any. I'm more of a board game kind of guy. I play this game called Terraforming Mars, which is a board game. So, Monopoly, Risk, that kind of stuff, strategy kind of game. I kind of like that kind of stuff. The string pins machines are less expensive to install and maintain as well. Yes, that's my understanding. My biggest issue with strings are they get tangled. The pin action is fine. Well, and that's part of the issue with the sanctioned version. The strings are a little bit longer, and they actually have a button they can push at the counter to make them sanctioned or recreation. So the sanctioned string pins are a little bit longer because the recreation modes are a little bit shorter. They don't get tangled up as much, but the shorter strings tend to knock down pins more than the sanctioned ones. So that's the difference. Now they could probably be made a little bit better in both respects, but that's the simplified version of it. Like I said, when I bowled with Dan Knowlton's place, he has two string pins in his machinery there, and I didn't really see. I've seen maybe a couple times where a string actually knocked a pin down. Very, very few times that I see a string actually knock down pins. Now the pins still fell a little bit differently than free fall pins, but for the most part, you know, if you threw a good shot, you got a good chance of getting a strike. And there was a couple of, you could mix the pins up a little. We had a few that were light mixers that just kind of toppled over, but they fell down. And it's like, okay, so you had some of the quote off hits that struck, but for the most part, if you threw decent shots, you got a chance of striking. And that's part of what bowling is. You throw a decent shot, you got a good chance of striking. You throw a bad shot, you're probably not going to strike. However, sometimes bad shots do strike. So to me, that's the thing. At the end, the better bowler is still going to be the better bowler. So how do you get more revs? That's a good question. It has to do with your wrist position and what you do with the wrist at the point of release. So for me, I don't really do a whole lot with my wrist when I bowl right hand or left-handed. I basically I got my wrist in a semi-strong position. It's not super strong, so I'm not cupped like this, but it's not backwards. So when I come through it, I'm basically using my fingers to lift the ball and coming around it like this. So a lot of people think you go around it. That's not how you hook the ball. I mean, it'll spin the ball, but it won't really hook the ball the way you want. So it's more, and I tell people, simple analogy is if you had a football in your hand and you were going to toss it underhand and get that good spiral to go this way, the more the ball goes this way, the more it's going to hook. And that's just simple physics. And people say, oh, if the ball goes this way, it's going to slide more than hook. That's not true. It actually, a ball going this way is actually hooking more in the oil than a ball that's going this way. And people argue with me all they want. That's not true. That's physics. That's going to make the ball hook more. And it just makes it more, it's more of an optic illusion. When that ball finally gets through the oil and gets more of the friction part and it makes a bigger move. That's what it is. But that's, getting that good side and Pete Weber's probably the best at doing that. Getting that ball to go this way, that's where he gets that ball to just make that big hook. He can hook the ball almost as much as the guys on tour, and their rev rates are 150 higher than his. But he has that great touch where he gets that good side rotation and get that ball to go that way. I can do that when I'm throwing the ball really, really slow. The problem is now my ball speed's way too slow, and it's just not very effective. So that, for me, I have a little bit more. They call it end over end, but it's not really end over end. However, I do remember watching a show from, I think it's 1987 in Miami. The title match, I was bowling Marshall Holman, and my ball was pretty much going dead end over end. It hooked like this much, and it was like, but I thought a 270 game at him. So, but when I first came out on tour, I didn't know how to throw the ball straighter. I learned how to do that later in the years and got to be better. But I remember when I first was on tour, like, how do these guys that throw it straight, how do they strike? I was, now, and then later on, guys are watching me do that, and they're like, how does he strike? He throws the ball straight. I wasn't, and technically, they didn't throw the ball straight, and technically, I didn't throw the ball straight, but it was straighter. Um, what TV shows are you into these days, if any? I like sci-fi. I don't know. I watch different things. Um, I, So I'm old, 66 years old. So when I was a kid, there was this, I love the Star Trek stuff. I love the Star Wars stuff. I like the Marvel movies. But when I was a kid, there was a show called Lost in Space. It was kind of corny, especially for back then. But back then, hey, whatever. When you're a kid, you like that kind of stuff. Now they've got a Lost in Space series. I think it's excellent. I really enjoyed the updated version of that. There's so many good shows out there. Now there's another show coming out, Good Omens. I really enjoyed the first two seasons. I'm looking forward. I think the third season's coming out. I like Doctor Who, sci-fi, British sci-fi. I like comedies. There was a lot of people liked Friends. There was a show, British show called Coupling, which I really, really enjoyed. But that's an old show from 20 something years ago. So those are kinds of stuff I like. Let's see. When you traveled overseas to like Japan for the Japan Cup in years past, what is it like when it comes to traveling with equipment and bowling balls overseas? Are the logistics of it challenging? A little bit, but I felt like if I could take five bowling balls with me, I should be able to figure out what to do. You know, the problem is here in the States, I got my van, I can put a lot of stuff in there, and I'll take a lot of stuff with me. But the reality is when I go to a bowling tournament, if I need more than three or four bowling balls, I'm going to be in trouble. It just means I'm not throwing the ball. I'm not doing the right things. And usually the better tournaments, I'm usually using just a couple of bowling balls, and that's including my spare ball. So I if I need more than three bowling balls, I'm usually in trouble. That's just the way it is. Do you ever participate in the USB Open Championships? I have. I didn't last year because of my shoulder surgery, and it looks like this year I won't be. I was scheduled, but it was on Memorial Weekend, that Sunday and Monday, which happens to be the last day of round robin at the Senior U.S. Open, and I'm like, I told the guy, says, I don't want to commit, to say I'm going to be on your team, but if I happen to bowl well, then I can't be on your team. So I'd rather say I can't be on your team, and you find somebody else to replace me. So he totally understood, and I don't mind bowling the U.S. Nationals. It's just, you know, I probably won't bowl it this year. So when talking about revs, who do you think had more revs and power, Robert Smith or the late Jimmy Keith? I don't know. Uh, they were probably pretty close, but you know, Robert Smith was a better bowler. Jimmy Keith was Jimmy Keith was good, but he only got one title. Oh, yeah, that was against me. uh, and I led that tournament by 400 pins. Um, but Robert Smith definitely was a better bowler. Um, Unfortunately, Jimmy passed away, way too young in life. People have been talking about clearing the thumb recently. How do you clear the thumb without hanging out? I don't see you exaggerating the yo-yo action like others on tour, and yet you still get decent rev. Well, I think many people would laugh at that statement. My rev rate's way lower than the guys on tour. My rev rate's like 280. The guys on tour, their low rev rates are 380, 370. On the senior tour, my rev rate's in the, in the lower, probably lower third of the guys on the senior tour. So, people ask, why'd you learn to bowl two-handed? It's like, well, when I bowl two-handed on the senior tour, now I'm in the top quarter. The difference is I didn't know where it was going as well. So that's the other part of it. Having the power is one thing, but having the accuracy to go with it, that's what makes those guys on tour so good, the power and the accuracy. Danger, Will Robinson. Yeah. If you haven't seen that show, I really recommend. I really enjoyed the new series. I really did. Um, but if you don't care for sci-fi, you're not going to care for it. Do you still have a rubber ball? I do. I have the black diamond I use for my spares. And if you watched me bowl this last weekend, you'll see that ball actually does hook. I missed way too many spares, but it was part of it's because my shoulder and my eyes and where my target is are just I'm just not seeing it right. And I get up there and I'm like, oh, that's not right. So I tug it, and then it would hook, and I'm like, oh my god. Um, do you let's see, how old were you when you bowled your first 300? I think I already mentioned that. I think I was 20. I'm 75 and started with hard rubber ebonite tornado. Only a modest hook was possible in wood lanes like the pros of the 60s and 70s. Well, lane conditions were totally different back then, and they're probably oiled with 1/8 of the oil, probably less than that way back when. So and most of the bowling balls were these hard rubber bowling balls, so that you didn't want lots of friction. If you were able to go back in time and you took a reactive ball and you tried to bowl in those lane conditions and you hooked the ball like some of these kids do, you'd have no chance. You would not have a chance against them because the lane conditions are not conducive to that. You wanted to play a nice down and in and keep the ball in a little track, and if you got in and out of that track, that was not good. So, and Don Carter told me years ago, and for those of you who don't know, Don Carter was one of the best bowlers ever back in the 50s and 60s, and I got to meet him, and I actually bowled with his wife in a doubles tournament. And he's telling me, he says, "Yeah, when I learned to throw the ball straighter and leave 8-10s, that's when I became a better bowler." And that's what the lane conditions called for back then, And then lane conditions changed a little bit over the years. The surfaces changed and everything, so then it became better to hook the ball, you know. Nowadays, the house shots are so easy, and all the kids learn to bowl two-handed because I can throw the ball there and it hooks, and I throw the ball there and it holds, and it's like, wow, this spin putting on a ball really helps a lot. And I think a lot of people are jealous because it takes lots of time to learn how to hook the ball one-handed. The guys that do it are very, very good at it. Don't get me wrong. The guys on tour, the one-handed bowlers, they're fabulous. But I think I think we were all taught the not the most effective way to hook a ball. The two-handed way is a way easier way to hook the ball. Problem is you gotta learn to do it. You still gotta learn to control it, and that's the biggest thing. Most people, they learn to bowl on house shot. They really don't learn to control it as well. You need to bowl on some tough patterns and stuff to really learn how to control it. I totally disagree with the urethane policy that they've been passing in a lot of places, but, I'm not in charge, so, um Hey, Walter, can we set up a chess game? I actually played my first game of chess the other day, and God, I couldn't tell you the last time I played a game of chess. I actually won. I was really surprised. So, um, I there's another guy, Victor Flory. He wants to play me chess, and I got a funny feeling he's a little bit better than I am. But back when I was in junior high, I played all the time, and then when I was in high school, I played a little bit in high school, and then we moved across state, and they didn't have a chess club, so I didn't play as much. And um, I'm I'm a decent novice player, if that makes any sense. So, do you think the Born to Bowl documentary reflects well the challenges of being a pro bowler? Well, so far, I think it's. I mean, I really enjoyed the second episode today. I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. I I've been in those moments, and I feel that. And like I said earlier, I've done my fair share of swearing and stuff when I was bowling. When I'm bowling on TV, I kind of mind my P's and Q's a little bit. But when you're bowling in competition, you're bowling 3.5 hour session or whatever, and yeah, it gets a little. And yeah, guys get at each other for doing stuff. God, he's doing that, he's irritating me. God, he's doing that, he's irritating me. God, I'm doing this, I'm irritating him. And it's we don't when we're competing, we don't all necessarily get along great. After, probably get along a lot better. But sometimes when you irritate somebody in competition, it kind of hangs over into your personal life. So yeah, it's what it is. I got along with most everybody bowled out there. There's a few guys I could do without, but I didn't hate anybody. Uh, Aside from Pete Weber, who would you say is your biggest rival from years past? Well, I mean, there was so many good players. Mike Albee, Parker Bone, Dave Husted. There were so many good players over the years. Dave Ferraro. Um, it just There's so many good players. Just Norm Duke. It's hard to just say a couple guys. And over the years, fortunately, I had a great career that lasted a long time. Got to bowl against a lot of different guys, but um, yeah, anytime you're bowling somebody on TV, you know, they usually knew what they were doing. I had plenty of guys win their first only title against me or whatever. Um, just and I finally won my first title against a guy who was very, very good, Steve Cook. So yeah, I'm getting my wrist way under the ball, having difficulty getting my hand through the ball. Will using forward pitch help me get through the ball with less grip pressure? They're asking the wrong guy. I'm not a ball driller. Um, I the wrist position, I think if you hook the ball more, you probably want to have a slightly looser thumb, but that typically, because they use more their wrist to hold on to the ball. But typically, though, most of the guys on tour, they get their arm swing back, and the wrist is fairly relaxed in the backswing. It's on the way down that they get into it, and that's when they get in that super strong position. But at the point of release, then they did that yo-yo release, which I do not do. Um, so you're kind of asking the wrong guy. And but if I watched you bowl, I might say I might be able to help you here or there, but I'm typically saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. You're probably asking me, you're asking the wrong guy at this point. Um, how do you decrease tilt, get that more controllable end over end roll? Well, I mean, basically, stand at the foul line and then throw the ball and just roll it end over end. Then throw a little harder, still end over end roll. You just kind of keep doing that and just throw a little harder and continue to have that end over end roll. And the thing is you don't really want an end over end roll. That's an end over end roll is not going to hook, and that's not very effective. You might want a little less tilt, little less hand, side hook. But the problem is most people won't want to do that. Most people like to get that good side rotation. There's not too many people trying to throw the ball like me. They're trying to throw the ball more like EJ Tackett and Tommy Jones and that. So um, it's that kind of stuff is what's the hook is a good thing. Just learn to control it. It's Joshua Knight. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Well, thank you, and congratulations. Joshua just bowled his first 800. I understand a week or two ago, and he's a young bowler in the area here. He first saw him about a year and a half ago, and he was throwing the ball with no thumb, kind of like Tom Doherty style. He threw the ball pretty well. And I guess I made a comment to him about, putting his thumb in and bowling two handed, or not putting his thumb in, but bowling two handed. Because to me, I thought that's a little less stress on your body throwing a ball that way. To me, throwing a ball one handed with no thumb in it is a lot more stress on your wrist. Some people can do it. I mean, Tom Doherty does a great job with that. So I suggested that. So he did that, and then so he's bowling two handed, and I'm bowling. If you've seen me bowling that the hot dog classic, which I posted on my both my fan page and my Facebook page and my YouTube, you've seen him. He's a young black man. He throws two handed. Those are great, and I kept suggesting throw the ball a little harder. Throw the ball a little harder. Most of these guys that bowl two handed, they throw it pretty hard. It's like, well, I got a bad back, I said, well, okay, well, do what you can. He finally shot at 800, and so congratulations, way to go. Let's see. I'm a USCF Life Master in chess. Okay, I'm not sure what the Life Master means. I think the U.S. Chess Federation. I guess that's what that is. I never actually joined the U.S. Chess Federation, but yeah, I maybe look up Victor Flory. I don't know what his rate. I think he said he was up to 1740 at one time. I'm sure that was years ago. I like Born to Bowl. It shows more than just 4 quiet games of bowling under the television lights on a Sunday afternoon. Those games aren't always so quiet, but guys are out there. They're trying to win. So the business of getting into somebody's face. I don't know. It's not very professional. Some people like to do it, but to me, that's not very professional. But there's always a lot more going on. I mean, that's why I recommend people going to watch the tournament. You can see all the guys trying to make the TV shows, or whatever, cashing, whatever it is. There's so much more going on at a tournament, and I think you really get appreciation for what's going on out there, as opposed to just seeing the guys bowl. And that was always a thing. Everybody said, "Oh, I want to watch the TV show. I want to watch the TV show live." And oh, well, okay, I get that, but honestly, go watch the tournament, the qualifying rounds, the match play rounds, or whatever it is, the lead up to the TV show, and then watch the TV show. But you see a lot more. You see all these guys. The fields start with 160 guys, 120 guys, or whatever it is, and then they're down to 24 guys or 32 guys, and and then they're down to 5 guys or whatever. So there's all this stuff that goes on, and usually 30, 40, 50 games of bowling to get to that spot. It's not like they just said, "Oh, you're on TV this week." That's not how it works. You got to go out and you got to bust your you got to bust them to get on the TV show. It's not a simple thing. Let's see. One of the most energetic, exciting matches I've seen involved was the '93 against Ricky Ward, King of the Hill. Even though you lost, do you ever know what happened to Ricky Ward? I saw Ricky a couple years ago. He lives down in Fort Myers. He's for some I don't know why he doesn't bowl the senior terms. I guess he might have some knee issues or something. I don't know the details, but there's a bunch of guys that are of age that don't bowl the national tour, which is fine. We don't need more competition out there. Good competition, I should say. Dave Houston never bowled a senior tournament. Mark Baker never has. First, he had a bad back, but Mike Albee never bowled. Dave Farrar bowled a couple times. So yeah. Are you more of a Kirk guy or a Picard guy? um, it depends. Which Kirk are you talking about? Um, I'm I'm I would probably be more like a Spock guy. Probably irritate people a little too much. Not that I was that smart, but any thoughts on Sarge Easter grip? My understanding is guys do that to kind of lower their rev rate a little bit, but it's kind of interesting since all these guys want to have a high rev rate. So I don't understand the reason for doing that. But in Chris Warren's case, that's what he did. He went to a conventional grip so he could kind of control his hook because he had so much hook with the reactive balls. So he just felt, and I said, well, for you, if I was you, I'd like keep one or two, you know, fingertip grips just for those lanes where you might want to have that extra hook on the ball. But he said he tried it, just it was just too much for him. So, and I remember the very first time I had a fingertip grip, and this was a rubber ball back in 1977 or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, the ball hooked. I'm like, oh my God, it's like, what's going on here? So it's like anything. It takes a while. You get used to stuff. So, but I, if it works for you, good. You know, you're the man. Well, thank you. Is there something wrong with you? Okay. Yeah, baby. Okay. What is your workout regimen? I don't have much of one. Do you do cardio? Not much. I remember Bo Burton and said you did push-ups. He did? I didn't do very many push-ups. There's a guy in the senior tour getting older now, Ron Moore. Um, I think he got to where he was doing several hundred push-ups and several hundred sit-ups. And I think not just several, but like 400 or 500. And I basically just did it for like 45 minutes or something. And then he just, would just do it that long and then stop. I've never been even close to that. I think at one time I might have done 50 or 60 push-ups. Now I'm not even sure I can do a push-up because with my shoulder, I've actually started doing push-ups, except I do them on an angle. So I'm like at a 45-degree angle. So is there something wrong with you? I think that might be a reference to um, the guy that took a flash picture of me. That might be what that reference is for, but I'm not 100% sure. Sarge Easter also helps folks with some wrist pain. Okay. Does your mindset change when you are shooting a 10 pin if a pin setter is in your way? I don't know what you're talking about, pin setter in the way. It seems to throw my game off slightly, I feel like, from time to time. Are you saying ball return? Because a pin setter getting in your way doesn't make any sense. Um, I drift. I used to drift a lot left, and I drift more or less left. And I'm finding that I'm into the ball return, even though I'm on the last dot. It's like my first couple steps are left, and then I go right. So it's like, and I can't. It's like I'm not as left as I'd like to be, and my eyes looking at my targets lately. My spare shots are just, I just doesn't look right, and I keep throwing bad shots, and I need to go out and work on my spare game. That is for sure. That's just last week was horrible. Let's see. I think rollerball is referring to the 2002 Empire State Open, a flash picture, which I still think is BS. They didn't give you the shot over. Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't. when they gave Bob Learn the shot over on that spare shot, I didn't agree with that. Um, so um, if you have a visual distraction, unfortunately, that is what it is. Even if somebody yells, it you know it's not, nobody likes it, but you just can't do it. Now, a physical thing happening is a different thing. I actually had a shot over one time because I had a sliver from, there were wood lanes. Somehow there was a piece, there was the wood started splintering or whatever, and I had a sliver like this long that got under my shoe, and then I dead stopped and fell over. That's like got hand planted on the lane. I'm like, and I actually was given the shot over, which I was like, oh, okay, then that kind of makes sense because it was a physical impediment. It wasn't something else. Or if there was something on the lane, if your ball hit something on the lane, that's not supposed to be there. That's a physical impediment. So that you would get the shot over. It's like if you're playing golf and you hit a wire, you get a shot over kind of thing. But if it's a tree, sorry, ball return. Sorry, that's there. It's already there. So. Um, Oh my God, that's a loser. Okay. Come on, Walter, you don't remember the infamous camera flash. I finally did remember it, but at first I didn't know what it was. Yeah, ball return. Sorry, not pin setter. Yeah, yeah. Um, well, and that's the thing, and I explained to people. I said, there's a reason why most right-handers drift left. It's because of the ball return. If the ball return was off the approach like it should be, it wouldn't be an issue. Then I would say, walk towards your target. That makes the most sense. However, the problem is if you're right-handed and you're trying to hook the ball and you're trying to play fourth arrow, now all of a sudden the ball return's kind of in your way. And if you're playing fifth arrow, the ball return is definitely in your way. So you got to learn to walk around it. Years and years and years ago, that's what I did. I learned to walk around the ball return to play fifth or sixth arrow. Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. And then it got to be more and more and more. And pretty soon it's like, and then I watch these kids come, these younger kids that come from college, and they're getting in front of the ball return to do that. And I'm like, oh, I could try that. So I learned how to do that. I I don't do it as much one-handed, but when I was bowling two-handed, I would do that, and I'd take like 3 steps. But the thing is I kind of want to keep the timing the same. So basically, when I teach it, I say, wait for the ball to get all the way down past your leg, and then go. And for me, it's take one tiny step, one baby step, and then slide. Basically, you want that last step to be as close as your normal last step on your slide step on your normal delivery. And all the guys that come out on tour, they all can play sixth, seventh arrow and loft the ball 15, 20 feet or more. Um, and basically, if you can't do that, you might as well not even go on tour because you're just not going to have much of a chance. Because when lanes get that way, you got to be able to play with that. Um, back in my day, we played fifth and sixth arrow. We didn't have to play seventh and eighth and ninth and 10th arrow, which sometimes these kids do these days, and they get there so fast. But the mindset's all different. Their mindset is, if I hook the ball more than everybody else, I can get left of them and get into the oil and play off of everybody else's play area. But they all think that way, so they all just go left as fast as they can, and it's kind of a crazy concept that is what it is. But back in the old days, you know, you watch go watch the TV show that Mark Roth won his very first term at King Louis Open in, I think, 1975 or something like that. Go watch that show. And they talk about how much Mark Roth was out hooking everybody. And on the show, he's like a whole board left of everybody. They're playing 17 or 16. He's playing like one board left of them. And they had long ball returns. So he's kicking a ball return every shot. It was kind of, I thought it was kind of amusing because they were talking about how much more, he hooked the ball in it, but it was just enough to make a difference. Not to mention, he was very accurate to go with it. He was one of the best spare shooters, and um, but nowadays it's like, oh my God, these guys it's get left and get more left and get more left. You watch Jason Belmonte, his first 2 steps are left and more left, and then he takes another left, and then he goes right to throw the ball to the right. And like I said, if the ball return was off the approach, none of that would have happened. But problem is the ball return only affects 0.2% of the bowlers that bowl, and that's the top bowlers. Probably less than 0.2, probably 0.01% really. The guys that bowl super competitively, and that's, it is what it is. So They make ball returns basically for the general public, and it's like, well, just deal with it, kind of thing. I mean, we. How is the shoulder doing? Do you feel like you're really able to go full speed at this point? No. My shoulder's okay. It's not great. I figure it's about 75%. Um, I can bowl, not great. I mean, I'm bowling okay. I actually cashed 3 tournaments in a row, so that's something. But I'm not bowling as well as I like to. My spare game sucks. Um, my ball speed's probably 2 miles an hour slower than it was. I didn't have excessive ball speed, but it's definitely lower now. And so now the ball's hooking a lot more. So now I'm using urethane stuff, which is not bad. I don't mind it. Um, so let's see. I feel like my biggest issue with 10 pins is my follow through gets wild from time to time, kind of like Bob Besby. If I can fully follow through, then I think I can get the 10 pin better. Well, for me, my strength was always my follow through. Playing horseshoes and bowling, I had a great follow through. Unfortunately, I kind of lost that a little bit playing horseshoes, but in bowling, my I still had a pretty decent follow through. My arm swing got kind of messed up a little bit. I used to tuck it a little bit behind my back. Now it's like stays out. Now I'm so far from my leg, it's ridiculous. I've tried to straighten out a little bit. It probably comes behind my back a tiny bit, but I'm still way far from my leg on the delivery. And for me, I've got no follow through. It's probably worse than the Stu Williams follow through, um, and and especially on my spare shots because the release is different. So the follow through is different, and I know it. I just need to practice it more, but I also need to get if I can get that arm to come up. That's normal. That I can, my left arm goes up nice, so it is what it is. So I don't know how long it's going to be before it's 95%. It might never get their way. I don't know, but right now it's definitely not the way I want it to be. And I know without a good follow through, it's to me the follow through kind of brings everything together, and that was one of the things I always try to concentrate. Having a good follow through to me brought everything together. So that's a loser, is what Peterson said when you left at 8:10. Ha ha. Well, I'm glad you thought that was funny. Um, Thanks for the chat. Appreciate you taking the time to answer all these questions. Thank you. Let's see what else we got here. Good questions over here. Okay. Last question for me. Could you give me your top 10 bowlers of all time with the greatest talent? Um, well, I think I mentioned a bunch of those guys before. You have Earl Anthony and Jason Elmani. Those are two kind of at the top of the list. Um, then probably Don Carter, Dick Weber, Mark Roth, DJ Tackett, um, Mike Albee, Parker Bone, Don Johnson. I don't know how many that is, 8, but I mean that's kind of my list there, if that makes any sense. Um, who were, if any, bowlers you bunked with when first out on tour? Oh my God, my first year on tour, basically, I used that to get around. My first winter league, my first winter season. I roomed with, I don't know, 6 or 7 different guys. In fact, I remember seeing one of them a couple of years later, and he asked, and I didn't remember him. It was pretty sad. Why isn't there a PBA event named after you, or am I missing something? A few years ago, they actually put my name on the PBA Resident Pro Championship, and then I said, well, you know what? I really don't care for this format, so I'd rather you not have my name on that format. And I said, okay, so I took my name off it. So, but yeah, great seeing you bowling again with your right hand again. Will you ever host a clinic in the Chicagoland area? Um, well, normally I do these clinics when I'm traveling, so it has to do with being in the area and having a day or two that I can do a clinic on. So it has more to do with that kind of schedule. Of course, the other thing, as I said, I'd probably be better off just doing clinics and not trying to bowl tournaments. But I like to bowl tournaments, so it's not very smart, I guess. Do you think the Born to Bowl documentary reflects well the challenge of being a pro bowler? I think they're pretty close, and they're actually just showing you the kind of the superstars, So um, there's a bunch of guys out there that really struggled. And if you watch Pin Gods, which was made in like '94, they actually show a couple guys you probably never heard of before, that were rookies, that were trying to bowl on tour. And then they also showed David Ozzie and myself. And then years later, when they did the League of Ordinary Gentlemen, they basically featured four of us you know, who were main players, and one of them kind of struggled that year. And and of course, well, not of course, but I really, uh, I enthusiastically tell people they should watch Any Given Saturday Afternoon, which is a mockumentary on the League of Ordinary Gentlemen. So if you haven't seen it, go watch Any Given Saturday Afternoon. It makes a lot of fun of me, makes a lot of fun of a couple other guys. But I really enjoyed that. I thought it was pretty funny. So how often do you use the same ball for spares too? Well, I use the same spare ball most of the time. However, there are some spares that I hook at, but those are the 2-8 combinations, the 1-2-4 combinations, except the normally a washout I go straight at, and the 3-9 combinations, I'll hook at that. But other than that, I use my spare ball, which is a black diamond. I'm so happy you said my name. My question wasn't clear. When you were younger, once you would throw the ball with your right hand, your left arm would go behind your body. I've been told left arm is for balance. So what? So what's your left arm doing at the point? Yeah, I do that and don't even realize I do it. Yeah, I know my left arm kind of whips behind my back when I'm throwing the ball. Um, that's just me delivering the ball. I remember years ago there was a guy from Korea who's a really good bowler. When he did that, his left arm would actually go over his head. But he was a really good bowler. So people do different things. Normally they teach it. My generation was the left side, the left arm was out to the left. But when I threw the ball, my left arm would whip behind, and I really, I really can't do it very well just standing here. But even as slow as I throw the ball now, I still do that. I don't do that left hand. When I bowl right hand, my right arm is actually. In fact, I don't even have my right arm. Of course, my doesn't feel as good doing that. That's probably why I don't do that. But I don't use my arm as much for balance when I bowl left-handed. It's kind of limply hanging out to the side. Where right-handed, that left arm whips behind me, and I don't. Honestly, I don't feel it, and it just happens. So. What is your solution or ideas to get more money for the tour? Oh boy. They need sponsors, but you need to get good sponsors, you need to be on TV. So, and it's not simple. The problem is bowling has a bad image problem. It's not that bowling's bad or anything. It just has a bad image problem. The people that are in charge of all the money, they're not interested in bowling, even though the ratings are decent for bowling and were better back in the old days. Getting sponsors was not a simple thing, So, hopefully something like this Born to Bowl will help a little bit, but it's probably only gonna help a little bit. It's that perception, and unfortunately, all the infighting that goes on in the industry doesn't help. People trashing this and trashing that. It's just, it doesn't help. Is slow play an issue in bowling or even horseshoes as it is in other sports? Is yes. I think there are just some people who really like to take their time, and it's a little frustrating. Both horseshoes and bowling does have a time thing. Get up and do your thing, and I get kind of amazed at all the young players these days. They watch the guys on TV, they wipe their ball off and stuff. So, I see these junior bowlers and collegiate bowlers. They take 15 seconds wiping the oil off their ball, and I'm like, if you make the TV show, they give you 20 seconds to throw the ball. So if you make the TV show, you're going to get zero on lots of shots. So you need to kind of learn to speed up. When I first when I first joined the tour, back in 1983, the three top bowlers were Earl Anthony, Mark Roth, and Marshall Holman. They were basically three of the fastest bowlers. Also, they got up and just did it. all these guys that stood there and think for 15 seconds to throw the ball, I don't know what they're thinking about. I think you can overthink stuff. Just get up and bowl. And and it's, but other people have other ways to be slow. They don't bowl when it's their turn. They wait three pairs to the left, three pairs to the right, and it's really not fair to the other players for those guys to do that kind of stuff. And it's very frustrating as somebody who's sort of quick. I'm not the quickest player in the world, but I'm not the slowest. But I've learned to become slower so that I didn't get done and these other guys are in the eighth frame. So I've learned to pace myself, which is kind of frustrating that I have to do that. Um, and then horseshoes, same kind of thing. They got time limits, and there was a guy that was really really good back in the days, and he'd just take his take his time throwing the horseshoes, and I'd see the officials and I'd be going like this, it's like, and they didn't care, they didn't do anything about it. Like, oh well, of course it didn't help. They kept throwing ringers against me. So, oh, let's see, where are we? Let's see. What did you think of the TV show yesterday? Scores were high all week during and then the title match. That was crazy. I mean, I think anybody I can't see anybody who would have bet that the title match would have been less than 400, and they didn't shoot 290. Um, and I think they both would agree they didn't bowl the best games, not even close. And I think David, that he just made some bad shots out of the gate, and then, oh, I better try something else, and then that wasn't good. And Marshall definitely made some bad shots, and he basically was panicking there, and and then he came through and threw some great shots at the end of the game. So kudos to him for doing that. And then David finally threw some good shots. Unfortunately, he left a ring in 10, then a 4-9. So it was kind of too bad for that, because he bowled great all week. So the stuff like that happens, and the thing is 10 frames on TV, it goes by like that. It is absolutely amazing how fast it goes by. I mean, it's over before it's over before it starts almost. It's absolutely amazing. My biggest issue is drifting right during my approach. If you're right-handed, that's normally not a good thing. So that's what I teach people. What I teach is I say, okay, if you want to get rid of that, when you're bowling, aim for the left lane or walk towards the left lane and aim for the right lane. And it's going to help your visual perception of how the lane is, because that influences a lot how you walk to the line. And so seeing that, where you're just do it, don't doesn't matter where the ball goes, don't care about that, just walk left and throw right, walk left, throw right, walk left, throw right. And after a while you get to where you're doing that a little bit. You might even start walking straight, and you might not even walk straight the first time you do it. But after a while, you'll start doing a little bit more, and pay attention to where you're starting, where your finishing is. And after a while, it'll make a difference, and it helps your eyes and how you see things and stuff. So, and that's one of my recommendations to the right-handed bowlers. And left-handed bowlers probably not a bad thing either, but it's not as critical because normally your left-handers don't have to play fifth and sixth arrow. But you do see some of the guys on tour that can do that. The better players, they learn how to do that. So, whoops. Where'd I go? Wow, I know that feeling. I had to step away from the game for 5 years due to illness. Um, when I came back, my game wasn't the same like what it was. I went from 215 to one. Well, that's a big difference. My game just feels different. That's hard for me to adjust to. Do you have any suggestions or tips? Well, it sounds like you might have some other things going on there. That's a huge difference. That's a huge drop in average. You might be doing some other things. So you might want to go see a local pro and see if there's something else you're doing. Maybe your grip. I don't know. I got arthritis in my hands. I had to change my grip quite significantly about 15 years ago. Sometimes you got to do things like that. Need more dedicated people like Eddie Eliason. I guess you mean Eddie Elias, but um, I'm not sure. Eddie Elias was the founder of the PBA. He wasn't a bowler, but he was a lawyer, and he ended up having some decent connections. And he actually was the Danny Thomas and Marlo Thomas's and who was it, Chichi Rodriguez. Um, so he was kind of their manager and stuff, and so he kind of got, you know, he had some connections with the TV industry and stuff, and he did a great job. And I think, unfortunately, some of the players may not have appreciated him as well as they probably should have when I was on tour. Um, you know, he um, hindsight's one thing, you know, but at the time, it's like we always the players felt like they should be getting more, and you know, some things happened that probably weren't the best interest of the players or the bowling industry. So, Thomas, I think you mean Kaiko from Finland, is unbearably to watch bowl so slow. He's very slow. I agree. When he bowled really well, you know, I think it was the first year um, he was bowling and he made the U.S. Open TV show, and we're like, man, he's got to speed up, or he's gonna get fined all the time. So, let's see. Well, this is really running a long time. Appreciate all you participating. I'm just going to answer a few more questions, and hopefully that's enough. So, let's see. WRW and Roth both had the best acceleration at the bottom of the swing. This enabled consistent, and that's what I always thought. I always thought acceleration through the swing was the best thing. Don't deaccelerate, accelerate through. I may not have thrown the ball excessively hard, had the highest rev rate, but whether I was throwing it straighter or throwing it with as much hook, I accelerated through the ball. So let's see. You are most certainly one of the very best two sports athletes of all time. Thank you. I'd agree with that. What is your mindset at the release point? I'm basically trying to hit my target. That's my thing. Try to hit that target. Who do you think is the best bowler that never won a title? Some people say it's Mark Thayer, Curtis Odom, Richard Wolff, Kelly Kaufman. Yeah, those are definitely great players. I mean, now we got Ryan Barnes, and there's a few other guys that are bowling out there on tour. There's so many good bowlers, and sometimes they just don't stay on tour, and sometimes they come back on tour. You got a guy like Tom Adcock who bowled on tour for a little bit back in the early '80s, and then he decided that maybe it just wasn't quite working for him, and he went back and he actually won a bunch of regional titles, and he won the senior title as a non-member, and I think he might have won two. And then he finally joined the PBA, and he's a great bowler. He's almost my age, still throws the ball great. Unfortunately, as we get older, we got a few more injuries. So, but yeah, and Bob Learn and John Mazza were both in that category, and also Bob Benoit and Mike Miller. And they all kind of went home, and Mike Miller and Bob Benoit, they basically changed their game and figured out how to, do something completely different, and they became great bowlers. And John Mazza and Bob Learn just kind of kept working on their game and became great bowlers. But when they first came out on tour, they weren't very impressive. They were okay, they were decent, but then they went home, and all of a sudden, got better, and then came back out on tour, and all of a sudden they're really good. So, and that happens with a lot of guys. It doesn't just happen. It's amazing, you know, some of these guys that were really good, and then they come out on tour and they're like, oh wow, now being that I used to be the big fish in the small pond, now I'm the little fish in the big pond, and it messes with guys. So it's definitely a thing to learn. And my first year out, I wasn't excessively awesome. I was okay, made the top 50 in a point list and a money list, which to me was awesome. That's what I was trying to do, make a living bowling. I thought this is great. This is going to be having a regular 9 to 5 job. And then a couple of years later, I got much better. And but it's amazing. I tell guys, I don't think I won to like my 110th tournament or something like that. 3.5 years into bowling and on tour. And nowadays, I mean, gosh, if you don't win your first 20 tournaments, you really suck. And I'm like, no, that's not true. There's a lot of good players out there. So it's what it is. These guys love to compete. Good luck to them. Let's see. One more question. If you were one of these young guys now, do you think you could be as successful in this era as you were in the '90s and hundreds? Well, 2000. It's hard to say. I mean, you learn with what you've got. In my era, I did what I could do, and I think I was able to bowl well even after the rev rates continued to get higher and higher because a lot of guys chose not to do what I was doing. And I think that made it easier for me to have less guys to compete against. So when, there was a pattern that worked for the straighter players, I had a lot less competition, so it kinda helped me become, stay in that, and I could kinda compete with the guys on the other patterns a little bit, so, being most people are used to seeing me just play down and in, and that's it, and they don't think I could play left to third arrow, but reality is I was pretty good at playing 5th and 6th arrow back in the old days, now playing the 5th and 6th arrow with what these guys do, completely different story. That's completely different, but, okay, an example of the US Open, the last time they had it in Las Vegas, the year that, Francois Lavoie won. Now they put out a pattern and they didn't reel all day, and so it started at first arrow, and as the day went along, guys moved left, moved left, moved left. Well, these guys burned up the lanes pretty good, and by the C squad, guys are just chucking it. They're throwing it. I was watching Marshall Kent. He's like throwing it 30 feet down the lane and playing, I don't know, 50 board or whatever. I was playing like 32, 33 at the arrows, which is pretty deep for me. But I shot 180 over that block for 6 games. I think Marshall shot 240 over for the block for 6 games. So it's not that I couldn't play inside. It's just that I didn't throw it sideways playing inside. It was more playing inside, and more the fall what we would call fallback, and these guys they call fallback going from 30 to 6 and coming back. That's not fallback. Fallback's going from 30 to 17 and hitting the pocket at 17. That's fallback. These guys don't know what fallback is. And then hoping you don't leave an 8-10 or a 5-10 because that's the ball's going to go that straight in the pocket, and it's got a very good chance of doing that. So, let's see. Now that you have thrown lefty, how much more of an advantage do you think lefties have? Um, I think probably more on local lane conditions, the lefties have an advantage, but on the PBA, the lane maintenance there, they try to kind of even that out because they know the ratio of right-handers to left-handers makes a big difference, but most house patterns are symmetrical, and that just kind of gives a slight edge to the left-handers. But sometimes maybe house shots are, geared a little bit more to the right side. I don't know. I don't know what the exact pattern is that we bowl on. I know there's dry on the left. I know there's dry on the right. So it's like, it's a house shot. And I think it's too dry, but it is what it is. Of course, the last 2 weeks I've really struggled. So but that's partly because I'm not a very good bowler. I mean, I'm decent, but my average is way higher than it probably should be as a house shot. Folks didn't see the monster game Boog threw on Friday to earn the number one seed for yesterday's game. Well, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, and he bowled phenomenal all week. I mean, all these guys did. Average 240. That's not a simple feat. And they say, oh, well, the lanes were easy. Well, okay, go out and bowl on them. See if you can average within 20 pins of your house shot average. Most of you are not going to do it. Quit bowling 15 years ago, want to start again. So your choice of equipment is important. I'm 70 years old. Any ball suggestions? Black diamond or rangefinder? Well, I have a black diamond, but the black diamond is not going to hook very much for you unless you throw it really slow and hook it a lot. Rangefinder, I don't know what that is. I mean, unless you're talking about the arrows, that's your targeting. But basically, I would start out with a lesson. You don't need a super expensive ball. There's plenty of low entry balls that will hook. I'm on the Brunswick staff, so they've got the twist, they got the rhinos. Those are actually very good balls. And then if you feel like you want something more aggressive, you need something a little bit more. There's plenty of bowling balls to choose from. They're coming out with them all the time. But my suggestion, I start with something medium like that. You don't need to have a lot of hook, especially on a house shot. House shots give you so much friction. You don't need to have all this friction that they seem to kind of want to put in bowling balls these days. Let's see. Thanks for your awesome Q&A session. Thank you. All right. Well, you take care. I'm going to close this up. This has been 2 hours. This is a lot longer than any other one I've done. So Glad you guys are staying up and appreciate all the questions. Thank you.